Good morning, everybody. Fantastic to see so many of you able to join us this morning for our webinar on the rules of intestacy, and good to see lots of familiar names and faces as well. So it's really looking at the overview of kind of the rules themselves, the priority order, of course, and also Eileen has some excellent case studies that she'll be talking you through as well. So I now hand you over to Eileen.
I'm sorry you can't see me. I've got a full face of makeup, so I wouldn't frighten the horses, but I'm sorry about that. Great. So the historical overview of intestacy is quite interesting. Realty and personality are two separate parts of an estate. In 1925, there were some reforms to these laws, and there were 5 different reforms. On the 26th of July last year, there was an increase in the statutory legacy amount. It was increased from £270,000 to £322,000, and that's to a civil partner. So the other thing that changed was the age was raised for children to inherit. Okay, so we've got some myths here that people in the main, out in the great wide world, believe that are correct and are in law. On intestacy, you have to be a blood relative to receive a benefit, apart from a spouse or a civil partner, of course. The intestacy order of entitlement, we can do divorce searches for you. It's quite straightforward. It's as well to think of: divorced, deceased, survived, married, separated, lied, just like Henry VIII. So with children, it's always as well to check they are legitimate by getting the birth certificates. Adopted in and out, we can check the adoption index. Stepchildren, they are not beneficiaries. Parents, if the parents living, or both parents are living, they would inherit. On one of my case studies later, this crops up as a query. Amy Winehouse, for instance, she died intestate and she was divorced with no children. So her estate went to her parents. Siblings of the whole blood. It sounds a bit Harry Potterish. Whole blood means you have 2 parents in common with the intestate. They may have been born before the parents married. They may have been re-registered after the parents got married. That is something that we can check for. It is noted on birth index. They may have been formally adopted in. So do double check with an adoption certificate. We can always do an adoption search, and it's quite a quick thing to do. Siblings of the half-blood, again, half-blood prince. Siblings who have got one parent in common. They could be the illegitimate children of the father or the mother, of course, are siblings of the half-blood. They only have to have one parent in common. It's very unusual for a grandparent to be a beneficiary. I've never found any. However, one of my colleagues, when I was talking to him the other day, did have a living grandparent, uncles or aunts of the whole blood, and who've got same parents in common as mum or dad. If they've been born outside the marriage of the grandparents, of course, they would be half-blood, so wouldn't come in the intestacy law for inheriting. Uncles and aunts of the half-blood. As I say, they may not realise, because they've never got their full birth certificates, that they weren't the full-blood brother or sister of the intestate. There's 4 things that you need to think about. The first one is the rules of intestacy in England and Wales very clearly can outline who can and cannot inherit. There are different rules in Scotland. I won't go through those. I'm just concentrating on England and Wales. The second point is there are very many commonly held myths that lead to trouble. People thinking, well, I'm living with the intestate, I'm his common law wife, I get something, and unfortunately they don't. There are only 8 specific classes of a beneficiary on a descending scale of importance. You can only go back to grandparents in England or Wales for beneficiaries to an intestate. And an estate is very rarely Bonaventure. That means unclaimed estate, where it ends up passing to the Crown or the Duchy of Lancaster or Cornwall. Seeing as we're at the 5th of November, remember, a couple of facts about Guy Fawkes. He wasn't able to leave his estate by will or testament due to this Attainder Act, which was passed in 1605 after the discovery of the gunpowder plot. They basically said that they were guilty of serious crime, and it prevented them from owning property or passing it on to their families, and it all went to the Crown. I've now got 3 case studies for you, which are all quite interesting. All these case studies, by the way, are true. But I've changed all the names and the date. I could only find one brother who, it was just his death certificate. It was well out of area. I managed to track down his widow, and she said, "Oh, I only know a little bit." When she said, "Oh, I know roughly where he lives," so I managed to track him down, and I spoke to him, and he said that he and 2 brothers were adopted out, but he didn't know about the other brothers. The brother that I'd traced the widow for, I spoke to his daughter, and she confirmed that her father was always known as Cooper, and then she knew that her uncle Lester was alive, so I managed to get hold of Lester, and he thought that some of the other children were adopted out. And then he said, "Oh, but my brother Donald's passed away." Donald passed away after the intestate. So there were then 3 possible outcomes. I had traced the death of the father, but not of the mother. So she could be alive and would then be the beneficiary. The Marjorie had died after the intestate, and so it would be her estate that was the beneficiary, or that she died before David. In that case, then his siblings would be the beneficiaries. Here's the family tree, so showing all the 7 siblings. So mum and dad at the top, Harry and Marjorie. You can see that the father Harry's passed away, but mother Marjorie hasn't got a death date. David is on the left-hand side. He's our deceased. Donald died after David, so he's an estate beneficiary. Lester is alive. He's a beneficiary. John Dunn, he's the one that passed away, but left a widow and a daughter. So the daughter is the beneficiary. She takes the father's share. And Robert, Brian and Charles are all adopted out of the family and therefore aren't beneficiaries to the estate. So the next case study, Major, which has adoption issues. Our intestate is John Major. He was married with 2 children. He then split up with his wife and got divorced, and his wife remarried. The wife and her new husband then adopted the 2 children and emigrated to Canada. When the son reached adulthood, he changed his name back to Major. When the intestate was in hospital, he named his son as his next of kin. It all looked perfectly okay. He then passes away in hospital, and the hospital then contacts the son, and he registers the death. Of course, he's not legally the son of John Major. He's adopted out and has no legal claim to his estate whatsoever. The son is not a beneficiary, and the estate then went to cousins. So this is the family tree. Here's Norman and Gertrude at the top, who are the parents of John Major, his brother Frank and sisters Mary and Suzette. Frank, both parents died before John Major. And Frank, his brother, died before him. He wasn't married, had no children, so no beneficiaries there. Mary dies before John and has 3 children, so her 3 children take her share of John's estate. And Suzette also dies before John Major. She's got 1 son, and so he takes her share. If we hadn't got involved, the adopted out son would have got would have claimed the estate, even though he wasn't entitled. My next case is Candle, which is like a Roman candle, going back to the fireworks. We had an intestate, Morin Candle, who died in Manchester. I could not find a birth or a marriage, so I looked for all births of Morin Candle. There was nothing. So then I thought, well, perhaps she's married and changed her name. So I looked for all the Morins marrying Candles. Again, there was nothing. So I traced where she'd been living, and there was an Albert Candle living at the same address. So I decided to look at Albert. So I obtained his death certificate, which named Morin Candle as his widow. I then found there was only one Albert Candle marrying in the Manchester area, and the bride was an Olga Caulfield. But Olga was the right age of as Maureen, same age as Maureen. So I thought, well, that's a bit strange. But I did find an Olga Caulfield in Ireland. So my colleague obtained the birth certificate, and it had the same date of birth as Maureen. So I did, you can do a Freedom of Information request to the NHS on deceased people. Request came back confirming that Olga and Maureen were one and the same person. Her family in Ireland had been looking for her since the 1960s. And this is the notice that I found in the newspaper archives from one of the sisters. The family tree was then quite interesting. I managed to track down everybody on the family tree. So we've got our deceased on the left-hand side, Maureen. And then she had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 siblings. Some of these are still living. Some have passed away with issue with children. Both parents predeceased Maureen. This is a chart. It's available on the Anglia Research website, www.angliaresearch.co.uk. And you can do yes or no boxes, and it'll tell you who inherits and who doesn't. At the bottom, you don't want it going everything passed to the Crown. You'd rather it went to relatives. So we do the best we can to trace everybody. One other thing that I would like to just mention is once you're administering an estate, perhaps of an intestate, it might be worthwhile thinking about an insurance policy. We can get quotes for different types of insurance policy. There's a missing will insurance in case you think there might be a will, but have done a will search and can't find one. It could be held at a solicitor's who hasn't given their wills into a will bank anywhere. The other thing you can do is a missing beneficiary indemnity insurance. You can do that for a specific person that you know is a beneficiary but you can't trace. And you can also do a comfort MBI, which is you think you've traced everybody, just covers you in case anybody does come forward. And it just covers everybody. I would thoroughly recommend it just in case. If you've got any questions that you want to ask me specifically on, or if you just want to run something by me, please feel free. My details are on the next screen. So there's all my details. Please feel free to give me a ring or send me an email if there's anything you want to ask me, even if it's just something quite straightforward. This last screen, it's got all different things that we can assist practitioners with. So we're finding missing beneficiaries in wills, free administrator search. We also do a family tree verification service. So if you've given a family tree and says that's everybody on it, you can bob it over to us and we'll have a look. We can do will searches for you. We can do missing beneficiary insurances and missing will insurances, as I've discussed. We can find and obtain wills for you. We can give you guidance on estate distribution, and we can do bankruptcy and asset searches as well. Anything of that nature at all that you want more information on or you would like us to look at for you, do email me. Thanks, everybody. I'm going to leave now. Thanks very much for everybody coming.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.